talk about. We need to catch up.
Yes, we do.
You look amazing.
You.
Okay, so we're going to talk about several things. We're going to talk about breast cancer. We're going to talk about tragedies, recovering from those tragedies, rebuilding, and then basically success after tragedies and things of that nature. But first, I want to add friendship to this because I met you when I was 18 years old.
Right.
Before kids, before marriage, before all of that, fresh out of my parents' house
Yeah.
via basic training. And we developed such a nice bond, trusting bond. And I'm 48 now. Met you at 18, so that's 30 years.
Wow.
30 years. 30 years. After 30 years of knowing you, I could still come to your house and feel comfortable sharing anything with you. And that's with us not even really keeping in touch over the 30 years. Every now and then we may like talk, but after 30 years, the type of trust that has to be, that's not normal.
Not today.
I could share anything with you and know that it's not going anywhere.
Right.
That says a lot. That says a lot about you as a person, your character. And me and you, we prayed. We brought some heavens down.
Yes.
So that type of friendship, even though we don't talk that much, there's not too many people that I would trust over 30 years span, because people change, people grow, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then as people are expanding and growing and changing, sometimes that friendship dwindles.
Yes.
And that bond and that trust, dwindles. And so you kind of become like strangers sometimes. No matter how often we talk, I still love the bond that we shared. Having a friendship with you at Whiteman actually gave me a new meaning to friendship.
Wow.
I had never really experienced that close bond with someone like that, for where we could talk on every aspect. We could pray together. We could talk about things that are private together. We could share, we could support, and not once will either one of us think that the other one is talking about us to somebody else. Like, it's sacred. This is not something that everybody have. I value that. Okay.
Thank you.
So moving right along, now that I got that out the way, okay, let's talk about breast cancer first. I want to go over some stats on breast cancer. So it talks about women 50 and over or more so diagnosed breast cancer, but you wasn't 50 when you got breast cancer, were you?
No, I was 34.
Wow. So they're saying that the normal stats are 50 and over. So it says 287,850 women were diagnosed last year, and then 2,710 men, which I don't think I really knew that men could get breast cancer. That was kind of weird for me. And another thing that I was reading when I saw the stats, it was saying that although less Black women are diagnosed with breast cancer, more Black women die from breast cancer than any other race. So that's really interesting to me. And I want to kind of delve into why that is, if there's really stats on why that is, but I thought that was interesting. But you overcame, so I just want to leave the floor open to you to kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about concerning that.
Okay. So I did want to mention that there's no cancer in my family tree.
Really? See, I thought breast cancer was hereditary.
It could be. So when I called my sisters and I was asking them, I was like, well, has anybody had breast cancer in our family? And my sister was like, breast cancer? Nobody in our family had any kind of cancer that I know of. So she said, I'm going to hang up and I'm going to call around, because she was going to ask my aunts and just different people along in the family. Nobody. And they like, what you putting in our family tree? You could joke about stuff with family. So we joked about that. But the way I found out is when I was at Whiteman, I found a lump, but they said it wasn't anything. Which that kind of bothers me, because the same spot where I felt the lump was where the cancer was.
Wow.
So was it there then? I don't know. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I think they missed it.
They could have caught it sooner then. They could have caught it sooner.
It's a possibility. I can't prove it because I can't be sure. But they sent me to a specialist, a surgeon down in Warrensburg, and they did another mammogram, but I don't think they did an MRI or an ultrasound. So maybe they should have done both or all three. I don't know. So when I got here to Maryland, I was working with one of the nurse practitioners, and my job was to call different patients and say, hey, you have this going on and the doctor wants you to go see a specialist. I would never tell a patient that they had cancer. I would just say there's some abnormalities, because I don't know what it is. I just tell them abnormalities. If you want to talk to the doctor, she's available to talk to you. But if not, like, she wants to refer you on to see this specialist. So one day she brought me the papers in and she said, I don't want you to call this young lady. I just want you to read this. And I was thinking, well, that's bizarre. So I looked down and I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, wow, what does that mean? And she said, don't freak out. We don't know anything. I think it said microcalcifications. I think that's what the word was. She said, we don't know anything for sure. I don't want you to freak out, but you do need to go see the breast care center. I was like, oh. And she stood there looking at me and I'm looking at her. And we just looked at each other and I'm like, she said, don't freak out. We don't know nothing yet. That kept playing back in my head. But I was like, this isn't something I've seen before that kind of jumped out at me that it's nothing. So I finished work that day and I went home and I told Wayne, I was like, well, this is what they said, da, 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 da. He's like, okay, we're going to believe God and that everything's going to be okay. And it was abnormal. It was the very, very beginnings of breast cancer. So I go in and I see the doctor. So it was actually a good process for somebody to have to go through if you have to go through that. Because they said, this is what we're going to do. We have your results. We have a whole team of people that we're going to look over your information and then we're going to come up with a plan to treat you. And then we're going to bring you back. We're going to let you speak with each person that was a part of the process and go from there. So I was like, oh, that sounds good because it's more than one person looking at it. So they decided the whole process. There was one lady in there that was kind of nasty. I cannot remember what the nastiness was about her, but I was like, and my husband stood up, you are not going to do this. She's sitting here going through all this stuff with all this on her mind. You are not going to mistreat my wife.
I'm a big stickler for customer service. People that are in these customer service fields, you can't ever remove the humanity from what you're doing. Because it may be something you see every day, but for this person, this is new. They're fearful for their life. Right. And you can't treat them like they're just a number. I don't get that. Like, people like that should not be in customer service roles at all, ever. But anyway, go ahead.
So after that, the doctor said the plan is to do a lumpectomy, which is like to take a lump of the breast tissue out where the cancer is. And if they're able to take it out and have clear boundaries, that means they got it all. So I'll just let them go on through their process, go through their plan. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what we'll do. So we did it. The borders were not clear. So he wanted to do it again. And I looked over at Wayne and I looked at him. I said, I can't do that. I said, that does too much to my mind, my heart, I'm not sleeping, all this other stuff. I said, just take the whole thing.
Wow.
And he was like, but da 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 da. I said, I understand everything that you said to me. I have the full picture and I understand that you can lump off and lump off and lump off. And then he told me, he said, sometimes you have to do it several times before you can get it all. And I was like, no, just take the whole thing.
So what made you say take the whole thing? Was it like painful? It was just stressful? Like, okay, I may have to come back and do this again. So what was that deciding factor?
It was the emotional stress that it put on me. I just couldn't do it. But the thing was, when I came back and I talked to the doctor after they got the whole pathology report of everything that was in my breast, he said, you made the right choice.
Wow.
I was like, that must have been nothing but God, because most people are like, no, I want to save my breasts at all costs. But I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to share was the approach that my husband took. We were sitting down talking and we were discussing everything that was about to happen. And we had to decide on how to tell the boys.
Now, they were what age at this time?
A guess would be 10 and 7. They were young.
Mm-hmm.
So we told Wayne first. That's my oldest. So we told him, come sit down, we need to talk to him about something. And he was like, am I in trouble? And we're like, what did you do? He's like, nothing that I know of, but I just want to know if I was in trouble first. But anyway, we told him, and we told him that we're believing that God's going to take care of everything. They haven't said that, that this is something that's going to take my life or anything like that. But that after the surgery and everything, that sometimes I might want a hug. Sometimes I might want them to just sit in a room with me. And sometimes I might just want to be alone. But they're going to have to help a little bit more around the house until Mom gets better. He asked a few questions, and then he was like, okay. And he gave me a hug and he left. Now, Mr. Derek, we went upstairs to tell Derek because Derek was upstairs. Wayne was downstairs. Derek asked all these questions, like mature questions. Mature questions. So we had to explain things to Derek, like kind of step by step on the questions that he asked. And so at the end, he goes, so what you're telling me is they're going to remove your breast and then they're going to put this thing in that's kind of like a water balloon and sew you back up and then you're going to be okay. I'm like, Yeah. Then he was like, I got one more question. We're like, what? Can I go play video games now?
You and I talked at some point during that time, and I was talking to you, and you was telling me how much you appreciated Wayne's approach with the boys and how much it meant to you that he really became your rock during
Mm-hmm.
that. And it was a lesson learned for them too, now that they're grown men,
Yeah.
being able to support. You know, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
remember that moment. How can you not? So after you got the surgery, when you look at yourself, did you feel different as far as I don't feel as feminine as I once did? What was those emotions that you kind of felt?
I thought I was going to feel that. And I remember just, looking at myself in the mirror going, oh my God, what does this look like? But I think the way that Wayne handled it actually helped me to handle it because he didn't treat one different from the other. Of course, he may have been a little gentle with the other one than the other one, but he didn't treat me like I looked disfigured or anything.
I love how you say he was a little gentle with one over the other. I got the visual, as he should.
Yes. Um, but he was just amazing. He was just amazing. And I remember that first week I was home, my sister had came to visit, and I remember her telling the story. She's like, I was calling all my friends, telling them you could think of something and Wayne would be right there handing it to you. And I remember when he was home for that week, I was like, oh my God, if this man don't go back to work. Not appreciating the fact that he is right there doing all this stuff. It just frustrated me that he was so there, which is crazy.
But you had a right to feel however you felt. It's kind of like the same thing, when women have a baby, like their emotions are all over the place. So I'm sure you can cut yourself some slack over however you felt. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I was like, don't you want to go to work or something? He's like, really? I think it kind of hurt his feelings, but I think he knew that my emotions were everywhere. And he was like, if you want me to, I will. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I said, well, I think I'll be fine at home by myself next week.
Now,
And
were your
so
sister still there? Your sister was gone by then.
my sister said she ain't had nothing to do because Wayne wouldn't let her do nothing. So she went on back home. She stayed for a week.
I remember I was moving to Massachusetts and I came to Maryland and I stopped by and I saw you guys. And when I walked in your house, there was such a sense of peace. And I think I remember telling you this. It was so peaceful. Like, you know how you can walk in somebody's house and it's just like, I don't think I want to stay here. It's like, I think I'm good. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to give hugs and then I'm going to hit the road. But
Yeah.
the peace that was in your house was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. I just remember that so well. I'm like, this is nice. And not to say that there haven't been rainy days. Y'all
Right.
been married how long?
34, I think, this year.
Wow. So not to say that there hasn't been rainy days within that 34-year time frame, but the peace that's in your home, y'all have something special. Because I
Yeah.
could feel that. I can really feel that. And that was beautiful. So since we're on you and Wayne, let's talk about marriage. 34 years. So people say 50% of marriages end in divorce. And hey, I've helped with that statistic. I have done my part with that statistic, okay? I've done my best. Okay, that's not funny. But anyway, so 50% of marriages end in divorce or separation. But I love love. I love the bond that you and Wayne have always had. How do you get there? Is it just day by day, situation after situation that you just handle individually? You don't keep bringing up the past? Like, how do you get to 34 years? Or is it that y'all just keep showing up every day and then that turns into weeks and months and years and then you're at 34? Like, how do you get from 0 to 34?
I think it's a mixture of things because in the beginning, when we first got married, after the first year, I was like, oh, Lord, no, 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 no. I got to get up out of here. This is not what I thought marriage was. I don't want no part of it. I got to go. And Wayne was like, what? Completely blindsided him. So he sat me down. He was like, let's talk about this for a minute before you go. And so He sat
Before you
down, we
pack up
talked
your things,
about it.
let's have a talk.
Exactly. He was so calm, so patient, so loving, so different from any other Joe Blow that I've ever been with. And he was like, it's a little difficult to fix any issues if you never tell me that there are any. And he told me something that blew my mind, and people still laugh when I tell them this. I thought he could read my mind. You know how on TV people be walking around, oh, honey, I was just thinking about that. I really, truly thought that. Found out that wasn't true.
Yeah.
Um,
That's unfortunate that it's not
I
true.
know. It's always been difficult for me to express my feelings or my needs or my wants because I've always put other people first. And that's like a blessing and a curse. So after we had that conversation, he said, so tell me something that's not right or that you want me to work on. Well, it had been a whole year, so the list was long. But it was like I just threw up on him, all this stuff. And so he said, well, let's just take it one by one.
I like
So,
that because a lot of men would have gotten defensive, overwhelmed, shut down, and be like, all right, well, fine. If all of these things are wrong with me, then fine, go ahead.
right.
I love the fact that he was mature enough to say, okay, let's take this list, this year-long list, one by one, and let's dissect that. I like that.
Yes, me too. He said he don't even remember that conversation, which is funny because it was
Because he knew
pivotal.
you wasn't going anywhere. He knew you wasn't going anywhere. That's why he don't remember the conversation. He was like, yeah, okay, we're going to go over these lists, but you're going to be right here tomorrow.
So I think the biggest thing for us is when he got into the marriage with me, because he had been married before, he was already used to arguing. I did not like arguing. So he said sometimes he would kind of egg me a little bit to see if I would argue with him because he hadn't argued in a while, I guess. So,
Get his fix.
yes. So I didn't like that. And with the relationship that I have been in, I cried all the time. So one time I told him, I was like, something is wrong. He's like, what? I was like, I haven't cried in a long time. Something is wrong. I don't like this feeling. It just doesn't feel good. I don't know what to do.
I need to cry.
He's like, you're really crazy, aren't you? I was like, no, you don't understand. And I was truly sincere because I cried a lot, like all the time. So working through those kind of things, taking things one day at a time. People always say marriage is supposed to be 50-50. If marriage was 50-50, marriage wouldn't last. Because if you on 50 and he on 50, who gonna help each other up?
I was reading this book or something, and this guy said during their marriage, they both wanted to leave, but not at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that's how it worked. Like at the point where, she wanted to leave, he was all in. When he wanted to leave, she was all in. So it was never that they was on the same page, that they both wanted to leave at the same time, which I thought that was pretty interesting.
I'm sure Wayne never wanted to leave me.
I'm sure he did.
Of course not. Of course not. But helping each other through bad times, like one of the times with him when his father passed away, it just crushed him because we hadn't been home in a couple of years. You know how it is. Most time when you call home when you're away, you talk to your mom. You be like, hey, Dad. And he say, hey, and you hear the love in his voice, and then you talk to Mom. So he talked to his mom, but we didn't hardly talk to his dad. We hadn't been home in a couple of years. So when we got down there for the funeral, it was all these people. His funeral was packed. Like it was like standing room only funeral. Wow. Because he had touched so many lives. You remember how Wayne was, if somebody needed something, somebody needed his truck, somebody, whatever they needed, that he would be willing to help them out. So his dad was like that too. And all the people from the neighborhood, Mr. Sammy protected me with this. He did that. He did this. He was just hurt that he didn't talk to his dad and everything. But then he just sat back and thought. He said, I wonder if would anybody step up and say anything like that at my funeral.
Wow.
Are you kidding? I said, your children would say how many people you help because they've seen it. But helping him through that.
So, I was kind of talking to some folks last week, a week before, and we were talking about men and how it's so hard for men to show emotions because they was taught they're not supposed to show those emotions, and how hard it is for them to be vulnerable and how hard it is for them to even cry. So in that time, it's like he's hurting, obviously. He's lost his dad. But so many men, even in those times, they still feel like, but I've got to be strong. Mm-hmm. So it's like they don't really get a break to just be vulnerable. It's okay for you to actually not be strong this time. It's okay for you to cry. It's okay for you to be vulnerable. So they don't get that a lot.
Mm-hmm. They definitely do not.
Yeah.